He's got to now make his way across this expanse of desert with prickly pear and all kinds of cactus. He is traveling in enemy territory. It's just another one of the exploits that contributes to the mythology of Kit Carson as this kind of incredibly plucky, self-reliant guy.
Against all odds, Kit Carson reaches San Diego in one day.
Halt! Who goes there? Hold your fire! Wait, I'm an American. General Kearney sent me. The Mexican army has his entire battalion surrounded.
What?
About 35 miles back across the desert.
By the time he makes it to American lines, his feet are all torn up, he's lacerated, he can't walk. This is one of the great feats in American history.
After a brief reprieve, Carson returns to San Pasqual with 200 reinforcements. As they approach General Kearney's position, their opposition scatters.
The sight of these approaching Marines, very well armed, was enough to scatter the Mexican soldiers. They didn't want any part of this.
Carson learns Kearney has survived, and now intends to continue his mission.
We'll make straight for San Diego, resupply, then on to Los Angeles.
You think we can take it?
We'll see.
As he prepares to leave, Carson is unaware his friend John C. Fremont is alive and planning his own mission.
Carson hadn't seen Fremont in a long time now. He didn't know if Fremont was alive or dead.
He's near Monterey, trying to gather an army to retake Southern California. By late November, he's amassed a force of more than 400 men. Determined to reconquer Los Angeles and burnish his reputation, Fremont heads south. At the same time, Kearney and Carson plan their own route north. Between them, the Mexican army. At stake, control of California and the final piece of American Western expansion. President James K. Polk is determined to seize California. But his plan depends on the outcome of a battle erupting 3,000 miles away. Los Angeles is Mexico's final stronghold in the territory. A prize the Americans want to reclaim. John Fremont closes in from the north. as Kit Carson and General Kearny move to attack.
Think about Los Angeles. You have Kearny approaching from the south. And Fremont was advancing along the coastal range and controlled the Cahuenga Pass. There wasn't really anywhere for the Mexican army to go.
Kearny's army arrives first. And overwhelms the enemy, defeating them in a matter of hours.
The combined force of Kearny's soldiers and some American volunteers pin the Mexican army down between Fremont's advancing army from the north and their combined force in the south. The Mexican army realizes, look, we're surrounded, and decided that it was time to capitulate.
The U.S. flag is raised over Los Angeles. But the war isn't over.
Polk had basically gotten what he wanted. California was in American hands, New Mexico was in American hands, Texas was secured, and Polk decided it was time for the war to end. Unfortunately, Mexicans had no interest in ending the war. They were angry, and they refused to come to terms.
To force Mexico's hand, Polk launches an invasion.
Grabbing California, the United States actually had to land an army on the coast of Mexico at Veracruz and then march up and take Mexico City.
The resulting treaty finally pushes the frontier to the western coast. Fulfilling the dream of building a nation that spans from the Atlantic to the Pacific.
American expansionism, this is something that has been on the agenda right from the American Revolution with Daniel Boone. So what we see in 1840 is a fulfillment of the promise of the founding fathers and even the colonists who arrive and go out there to get their piece of the American landmass.
The Empire of Liberty, first imagined by Thomas Jefferson and championed by Andrew Jackson, is achieved by the unlikeliest of leaders, James Polk.
President Polk is one of our most underrated presidents. I mean, this was a very powerful man, a guy with very clear intentions. When Polk assumed office, he looked west and he saw all that land and he said, you know what, I want it all. It was really one of the greatest land grabs in the history of the world, to take that whole western third of the continent and to get it all in one generation.
If you want to understand how important Polk's presidency was, just consider this. California, if it were an independent country, would be the 5th largest economy on Earth. Imagine American history without California. And then imagine Mexican history with California. The history of the entire world would be different.
In California, John Fremont is appointed temporary governor of the territory. He and his trusted partner, Kit Carson, parted ways 6 months before. But now...
Sir. Hello, Carson. It's good to see you again, sir.
with the war over, they finally reunite.
Carson hadn't seen Fremont in a long time now. He didn't know if Fremont was alive or dead. And theirs was a deep and lasting friendship. So Carson was probably very, very glad to see him.
Well, there's plenty of work to be done. If you'd like to stay on, I could certainly use you.
Yes, sir.
Fremont goes on to become California's first senator, while Carson fights for the Union in the Civil War. But it's their adventures on the frontier that make them legends.
Fremont's explorations changed the way Americans thought about the West. Prior to his explorations, Americans tended to think of the West as merely a direction. After Fremont, the West becomes a place with known features. He forces Americans to see America not as an Atlantic-bound seaboard nation, more as a continental nation-state.
The newspapers back east called Fremont the Pathfinder, but really that title would more appropriately go to Carson. Carson was the real Pathfinder. He's the one that kept the expeditions on track and out of harm's way. These two men just sort of desperately and rather profoundly needed each other in order to accomplish everything that they accomplished.
By the end of 1847, California is officially a U.S. territory. But only 7,000 Americans are living here. If America wants to hold this ground, it has to settle it.
Polk wanted to get as many warm bodies on the ground living there to start this process of California, to kind of assert their own interest in refashioning California as American terrain.
There was a policy on the part of the U.S. government to get as many people out there. Because if you had boots on the ground populating these territories, well, that makes it a fact that this is the future of America.
And nothing motivates settlers more than the chance to make a fortune. In January of 1848, the promise of California pays off. When gold is discovered.
This gold rush now makes this amazing kind of land grab really, really worth it. I mean, this is like America winning the lottery all of a sudden.
A gold rush will soon compel thousands to move west. The man who crosses the country to deliver the message is none other than Kit Carson.
The amazing postscript to this is that Kit Carson meets with President Polk in December of 1848. And what news is he bringing? He's bringing news that gold has been discovered in California.
Gold fever is about to transform the frontier. With the addition of California, the United States at last stretches from sea to sea. The land itself is sparsely settled by Americans. Until a surprising discovery in 1848. Gold.
Gold was discovered in California in early 1848. No one expected anything like this. California, when the United States acquired it at the end of the war with Mexico, was about as far from the civilized portions of America as you could be and still be on the face of the planet Earth. Nobody expected that California would be settled in any hurry.
Word of the find travels quickly, igniting gold fever across the United States. Soon, over 300,000 pioneers stream into California. One of the biggest migrations in American history.
Once the gold rush is ignited, all of these men go west on these trails that had been mapped and charted by Fremont and Carson. This ensures that California is going to be American territory forever.
Over the course of the gold rush, settlers mine over 750,000 pounds of gold, generating more than $2 billion, over $61 billion today. In 1850, California becomes the 31st state, completing a chapter in American history that began 75 years before on the Appalachian frontier.
In many ways, this was a continuation of the American Revolution. You know, we were 13 colonies, but we kept pushing west and pushing west. But it wouldn't be a complete picture until we were a nation from sea to shining sea.
The daring frontiersmen who first braved the wilderness helped shape the future of America.
The American frontier spirit was right there at the very beginning, during the American Revolution. That notion where nothing is going to stop you from going out and getting your piece of the pie.
As they relentlessly moved west, seeking new land and opportunity, they clashed with Native American tribes, determined to defend what was rightfully theirs.
The frontier was both the dark side and the light side of American expansion. Native people, just like settler people, need to be counted as Americans.
Like any human being, American Indians fought for their families, for their nations, for their lands, for their assets, for their life. We are still here. We've not been exterminated. American Indians are to be honored for that, and they continue to fight today.
Brave explorers mapped the unknown, blazing trails for settlers to follow. Bold and resourceful, the frontiersmen became American legends.
Come on, man! There was always a fascination with this image of the Pathfinder, with buckskin and rifle, sort of going out into the great unknown.
Icons who inspired generations with tales of their endurance and skill.
The kind of people who would go to the frontier were tough, and they seemed to relish danger and the unknown. The frontier was not for the faint of heart. The frontier was hard, and it bit back, and it hurt.
Fire! They were willing to put up with insane risks. This was a world without outlaws. There were no laws to be outside of. You kind of created your own code.
The frontier itself helped forge the nation's identity and has come to define the American spirit.
Congratulations, Captain.
The frontier is in America's DNA. It is the way we think of ourselves. We no longer think of ourselves as a frontier society, but we like to think of ourselves as these individuals. That was, in essence, frontier. The frontier represented the quintessence of American opportunity. The frontier disappeared from American history over 100 years ago. But the frontier remains very much alive in the way Americans define ourselves.
Previously on The Men Who Built America, Frontiersmen. Lewis and Clark achieve the impossible, reaching the Pacific, claiming new land for the U.S., and infuriating Great Britain. By 1812,